Hi everyone, this is David Muñoz, the presenter for Building Generative AI Features for All. Can someone send a message in the chat if they can see my screen? Just want to make sure the screen share is working. Oh, okay, sorry, I was in the wrong chat. Okay, cool. So I see you can see my screen. Thanks for confirming. So yeah, let's jump right in. We have half an hour. I'm hoping to spend 20-ish minutes on the actual content, and then happy to do some Q&A at the end. So a little bit about me. Like I mentioned, my name's David. I'm a senior UX researcher on the Google Slides team. And it's been about 2.5 years at Google, and it's been awesome. Lots of cool features we've worked on. Two of the main ones I've worked on as part of the Google Slides team include image generation. So here are some fun AI photos created in Google Slides, one of my favorite types of dogs. And then the second one is tiramisu. So if you were ever wondering what tiramisu might look like if it included avocado, that's one of the fun things of Gen AI, right? You get to be creative and have AI create novel outputs. The other thing I've worked on a lot is slide generation. So this slide I'm showing here, entirely AI generated, the text, the layout, the image itself. So yeah, all exciting stuff. And today we'll be talking about a few different things. I'll do just a quick overview. I just did my intro. Then we'll talk a bit more about product inclusion and equity in action. I have two use cases, one more geared towards researchers, one more towards designers. And then, as I mentioned, definitely would love to do some Q&A at the end. Okay, so let's start off and define what exactly we're talking about for this talk when we say product inclusion and equity. So really, it's about bringing an inclusive lens throughout product development to create inclusive, accessible products that work for everyone. So here's one example diagram where you can see product inclusion is this broader umbrella, and within product inclusion, we have inclusive design, and within that, we have accessibility. So all of these are very important. There's lots of other methods and other processes that help us create more inclusive products. And being at Google, this has been pretty cool. Our original mission statement, crazy, this is, I think, like 25 years old now, is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. So from the beginning, it's really been a goal of the company to make things more inclusive, more accessible for everyone. And yeah, universally accessible. That's the part we'll be chatting about today. So when it comes to products, yeah, lots of different roles involved in creating products, right? Engineers, developers, designers, product managers, project managers, legal, risk, security, Q&A, right? Lots of different roles. We're designing for tons of different types of people, right? All ages, different races and ethnicities, depending on the different product that you might work on. Some of these what we call dementias of identity might be more top of mind. Some products, of course, might skew one way. Maybe older folks tend to use your product, or younger folks, Gen Z, who knows? So it's a crazy world of product out there. But yeah, these are all the things that we try and be mindful of when we talk about product inclusion and equity. So yeah, that was just a quick intro just about the terminology. Now let's talk a bit more about some of the things we've been doing recently as part of the Google Workspace team. So like I mentioned, I'm on Google Slides, but I work with a lot of different coworkers in Docs and Sheets. The collective group is called the Workspace. Hopefully you're familiar with it. If not, no worries. It's basically like the competitor to Microsoft Office and Office 365. So yeah, really, in a nutshell, what we've tried to do more often over the past few years at Google and on Workspace is start all of this process earlier and have more frequent checkpoints when it comes to developing inclusive products. So here's a fun diagram showing how companies tend to build products. So upfront, usually someone creates the requirements. Then hopefully there's this cycle where engineering, design, research are all collaborating on how to build the product that's been defined up here. And unfortunately, usually the inclusive part comes at the end, right? And at least in my experience, a lot of time there's tons of focus on accessibility, but not necessarily internationalization, making our products more accessible for people of different ages, different languages, etc. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, it tends to be a bit of an afterthought here at the end, and then we have timelines and we have to launch, even if the product may not be as inclusive and accessible for all. So again, not ideal, but that's just the reality for various reasons at a lot of companies, including most places where I worked before. So what we've been trying to do on Workspace is have these different checkpoints. So up front, not only having product requirements, but also requirements that are more specific to inclusion. Then as we are designing products, we aim to get feedback from diverse individuals. And then lastly, in addition to accessibility, we try and do more testing around language support and different cultures and localization needs. So I will now talk about some of the things we've done to change the process, the way we do things. And at a high level, everything I'm about to describe is called product inclusion readiness. I'll refer to it as PIR. And really, three goals of this process. The first one is making this idea that, we want to create great products for everyone, a common business practice. So it's something that we want our leaders to support. We want everyone creating these products to be aware of and supportive of this goal. Second is trying to identify any possible risks early. And I'll have an example later in this presentation about how we did this. But again, like I showed in my diagram a few slides ago, unfortunately, a lot of times we find out about accessibility issues or other inclusion-related issues really late, like weeks before launch. So that's something we, of course, want to avoid and identify earlier. And last but not least, one of the goals of this process is to keep it as lightweight as possible so that all the teams across Workspace, it's pretty crazy how many teams we have. Depending on how you define a team, there's at least 12 teams, there's over 5,000 employees. So it's really important that this process be easy to understand and to follow so that all the teams can follow more easily. So I'll walk through the process high level about how we've approached this, and hopefully this resonates with you. Would love to get your feedback at the end of my presentation today. But since this is a new process, it's not something that we immediately expected every single team to follow, right? That's definitely not realistic. It's a lot to demand of every team. Instead, what we did was we worked with our leadership team and some of our directors and VPs to pick out specific high impact launches to pilot this process with. The first step after that was creating a lightweight form to ask teams about what they're doing today to create products that are more accessible, more inclusive. Based on that feedback, myself and a few others formed a small product inclusion and equity team to review the feedback and provide advice to each team depending on what feature they were working on, what timeline, what budget they were working with. And we summarized all of that in a lightweight PIR report. So really, I think it was like 2 or 3 pages in Google Docs, pretty to the point. And then the product team reviewed that report and asked us any clarifying questions and took it from there. And this is not expected, of course, to be a one-time thing, right? Products evolve over time. So we set the expectation that this PIR process really should happen over time. So after a major launch, kind of revisiting this lightweight form, getting new feedback from our Product Inclusion and Equity Task Force. So here's one example to kind of, I know a lot of this may seem a bit abstract, So trying to kind of bring this to life a bit more. So here's an example for a Google Docs team feature that is called the Writing Tone and Style Checker. So part of the forum was trying to identify not just the risks of not designing for specific types of users, but also the positive impact of designing for certain types of users. So that's what I'm showing over here on the y-axis, positive versus negative. On the x-axis, we have the different dimensions of identity. That's what I referred to earlier in this presentation, where we talked about age and gender and other ways that people are different and unique. And so one way we can think of those dimensions is some of them are invisible, right? You can't just see them, the representation based on someone's physical appearance. But other traits are more visible, right? Like age, sex, race, etc. So here's what this matrix looked like when we filled it out for the Google Docs team. So we saw two opportunities and risks for them at a high level. So one included age, right? As we have people staying in the workforce longer and also have new people in the workforce in Gen Z, eventually Gen Alpha. For this specific feature, which is giving people feedback on the way they write, if it's too formal, not formal enough, etc., if it's properly formatted, grammatically correct, this could actually be a nice way to help people continue to learn and refine their English skills, and also pick up on new trends and writing lingo, let's say, right? Like Gen Z get more familiar with more traditional language, and then other workers who may not be as familiar with Gen Z lingo get more familiar with theirs. So interesting opportunity there. The other factor we suggested was English proficiency. So depending if someone's a native English speaker or it might be their second, third, or fourth language, right? How could this feature help them become more confident? So these were some of the questions we posed to the Google Docs team. So yeah, just one example here. So in terms of some of the outcomes of all of this process change, definitely had some good outcomes. The teams we work with said that they felt more, let's say, direction, right? Because a lot of times we talk about designing for everyone, but it can feel a bit kind of hazy what we mean by everyone. So by providing this specific perspective, like, hey, like, yes, your product should be accessible for everyone, but how might it impact these two specific dimensions of identity? It really helped them focus the feature in the product. It also made them more aware of product inclusion and equity. We have tons of other resources at Google that help with research, with design for these diverse individuals. So a lot of the teams we work with weren't aware of these. So for example, we have a dedicated accessibility team. We have different ERGs that can provide usability testing feedback. So lots of great stuff. It's just at a company as large as Google, not every team is as aware of those. And then also, because we started baking in product and inclusion early in the process of development, teams became more aware of, oh, wait, yeah, we were waiting way too long to think about this before launch, like weeks before launch. So yeah, it's good we're doing this more upfront. And overall, this led to just greater interest in this space for the teams we work with and wanting to learn more about what they could do to build more inclusive products. So skipping ahead, a few other things we've done. Now I'll have a few examples more specific to the researchers in the room. Hopefully this is interesting for others as well in creating playbooks. So we created a playbook to summarize different recruiting approaches, different screener language that's more inclusive when it comes to asking about gender identity, about age, etc. And we also provided examples and templates for teams to provide a clearer link between the inclusivity focused work they were doing into specific product requirements. So you may remember earlier I talked about most companies have very clear product requirements, but not necessarily inclusion specific requirements. So that's all this is referring to. Just kind of baking in those more inclusion-specific requirements and perspectives into the overall product requirements. So yeah, lots of things that could go in UXR playbook. I mentioned recruiting strategy. We provided resources for helping teams kind of self-navigate what dimensions of identity might be most relevant for their products. We included different timelines. So for example, if a team is interested in doing testing with low vision users, what exactly does that mean, right? What kind of budget, what kind of timing might be needed to plan that. And we also included a few example decks and tables to help summarize all of these different plans. So a few more use cases here. I'll show a follow-up to the Google Docs example I showed earlier with the English proficiency and age dimensions. So for this specific study, the team ended up doing a bunch of international research with folks in India and other countries where there's generally high levels of English understanding, but not necessarily native level. And the tricky thing with this, as you might imagine, is when you're asked things on a survey about your, let's say, skills or expertise, sometimes it can be, a bit tricky. You might overrepresent your expertise. You might even feel offended by the question, right? Like, wow, like they're asking me how proficient I am in English. So it really was an interesting exercise to think about how to word the questions and answer choices in a way that was thoughtful and respectful and not seen as offensive. And the team created some pretty interesting personas based on not just the proficiency, but also the types of writing that these different individuals need in Google Docs. So more technical versus more creative. So yeah, really interesting stuff here. 4 different personas that consider this dimension of inclusivity, English proficiency, with the more kind of job-related writing style, technical versus creative. What the team learned from this was, as you may be picking up, start early, do things often when it comes to inclusion, design, research, etc. Also, I'll actually skip over this for time. Sorry, I realize I am a bit over, and I want to show one more interesting use case here. So, talked a lot about research, but let's talk a bit more about how you might. This is a bit meta, actually. How you might use AI to create more inclusive AI features. So, AI is a design partner. And in this slide, we're talking about Gemini, but you can use ChatGPT, you can use any other Gen AI to help you. And what I'll be talking about is creating user journeys, user tasks to help guide design. So why do this? Okay, let's say you're a researcher, a designer, a PM, and you have a ton of different priorities you're balancing, right? In terms of what the design should look like, what the timelines are for building the feature. And inevitably something falls through the cracks, right? Sometimes that might be user needs, sometimes that might be more inclusive design, language, or features, etc. So with AI, that can help kind of streamline the user requirements stage. So again, a bit abstract. Let me kind of bring this to life a bit more. So at Google, we use this terminology a lot, critical user journey. Think of it as jobs to be done. That's another common framework you'll come across a lot in the product world, but it's really just a way to describe what users are trying to do from their perspective, not from a technology perspective, right? It's not about, I need to connect database X with database Y. It's more as a business owner, I need to pay my employees, right? That's the critical user journey. So what Gen AI can help you with is writing these different tasks from various perspectives. So that's what we mean here by inclusive user flows. You can even ask it about user tasks for, just to pick a random example, like what if someone is a Black woman business owner, right? Like what are their unique needs for my product? What should I be considering? And so again, to bring this a bit to life, let's say you want to create these different onboarding journeys or tasks, right? Like what do I need users to do to start using my product efficiently? So you could ask Gen AI, okay, as a low vision user, what should I be aware of? If someone's a Spanish speaking user, if someone's non-tech savvy. And so to cut to the point here, this is just three examples of diverse individuals, but you could ask, again, ChatGPT, Gemini, to create hundreds of different tasks and then group them and identify these different tasks. So you might say, okay, across these different dimensions, what my users need is making meetings more searchable, staying engaged in the meeting. And this can help guide the design to make sure that you're providing the features that they need. Of course, just want to say this is not meant to replace research, right? We still need to talk to users as always. This is really more of like a starting point when you're thinking of what to wireframe to meet the product requirements. So with that said, that is what I had to share. Hopefully from this talk, you learned a bit more about the types of products that are built in tech companies at Google specifically. Hopefully you picked up a bit on different things to consider for more inclusive product design. So with that, I will keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A to see any questions that come in, and I'll just go in order. So I saw Kim asked how diverse the team was that worked on this. Yeah, great question. Trying to think in terms of, I think the greatest diversity is in terms of like the backgrounds people bring in design and research. Lots of different backgrounds: psychology, arts. I think someone on my team majored in photography. I'll admit age definitely. I think unfortunately in tech, a lot of product roles tend to be younger, right? Like 20 to 40 in terms of age. Race and ethnicity, though, pretty varied, which is nice. That's definitely not always the case on teams I've been on in the past. And UX tends to be, at least in my experience, there tend to be maybe like 60% women, 40% men, roughly speaking. And that's been pretty true at Google too. So yeah, overall, pretty diverse team, I would say. Okay, what are some of the generally accepted parameters for inclusion requirements? Yeah, that's a great question because, or sorry, for example, in age, I'd assume it's not necessary to do. Yeah, so it's definitely a bit nuanced, right? And that's what can make a lot of this feel so intimidating at first, right? Let me go back to one of these earlier slides here. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so here are the different, and this is just a subset too, right? There's definitely other ways people are diverse, but these are some of the main dimensions that may impact how someone uses a product. So you're totally right that for age, yeah, like children, clearly there are some products that may cater towards children, but for many, like Google Slides, right? Like I'm not designing for a 5-year-old, at least not yet, maybe in the future. So yeah, you definitely have to be mindful of the target user, ideally based on analytics too, right? Like if you're able to see, hey, for my products, again, just making this up, like maybe half of our users are in the Western hemisphere, half are in the Eastern hemisphere. However, looking at our research studies, we really haven't done any recently with people in the Eastern hemisphere. So maybe that's an opportunity for us, right? To learn more about those users and see how their needs may compare and contrast with the users we typically speak to. Okay, referrals. Yeah, good question. If I know you on a fairly personal basis, happy to do so. Feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to answer questions. That's something I'm happy to do for anyone in this space. And then I'm scrolling up to see if anyone has any other questions real quick here. Do you happen to know how this affects other products? Oh yeah, Notebook LM. I haven't caught up on that one. Seems really interesting, to be honest. That I'm trying to think. I might be thinking of the wrong product. Let me just look up one sec. I think it's another Google product. Yeah. Um, so I think, yeah, I don't know if I can comment on that. It's a different part of Google that I'm not as familiar with. So uh, it is a good question though. Maybe that's someone we should collaborate with. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Again, for your role, do you dive into wireframing and prototyping? Um, oh wait, what is? Oh, okay. Sorry if I didn't realize a lot of the confetti was probably from me. Uh, anyway, for your role, do you dive into wireframing and prototyping? No, not really. In some past roles that were more like research and design, I dabbled a bit in wireframing and prototyping. What was it? Axure, Envision, Figma, Sketch. Um, Not really at Google. Google's more specialized. Researchers. We have researchers, designers. Um, Not as many engineers, but some UX engineers who are solely focused on prototyping. So it's been a while. I have some experience with this, but not recent. Ooh, okay, let's see. How do you test the UX UI experience? Are there any specific security aspects? Yes, that's definitely, I could talk about that for half an hour. uh, yeah, there's a lot of nuances. Trying to think what the best kind of summary I can give is. There's definitely a lot of early testing. So going back to wireframing, right? I don't create the wireframes and prototypes, but I definitely get feedback on those prototypes early on for different features, like that image generation feature I showed you in SlideGen. Um, and yeah, we definitely have to be cautious, right? There's a ton of interest in Gen AI, and yeah, we have consent forms to make sure that our participants don't like basically spill the beans, right? Like a lot of things we show them may be early previews. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of security considerations we need to take into. I guess is the short answer. The good news is we also do lots of research with existing features. So I think next week actually, I'm doing some sessions for that image generation feature. It's been available for over a year now, and we want some updated feedback. So for that, there's still some security considerations, but not as many since the feature's already been live for a while. Okay. Um, what advice would you give to those wanting to get started in this field? Yeah, also hard to answer, and I could talk about that for half an hour. It's definitely a tough time for UX in general. There was a boom of hiring like right after COVID started, like 2021, 2022. It's died down. Um, I think the biggest advice would probably be being flexible in terms of where you're located, right? If you're able to move to a position, that definitely may give you an upper hand. And then also, may sound a bit cliche, but definitely networking, especially on LinkedIn, can help. Trying to um, find if there's any common connections with anyone who's hiring can go a long way. Okay, so let's see. How do you go about staying on top of the fast? Yeah, that's definitely it's interesting. We're definitely moving faster than ever. I think at any company working in AI. So again, could talk about this for half an hour. So I think the short answer is definitely trying. Sorry, impact your working career. So from a career perspective, it's really been beneficial. Like we're launching super fast. We're getting tons of user feedback. It's all positive. I think the biggest risk for me, at least, is like the work-life balance and just being mindful of when you start working, when you stop working. Um, do you ever build for other automated systems AI to use? Other... Sorry, Bernadette, if you could or I don't know if there's any other detail you could add. I'll try and answer that question. What type of fundamental webinars or courses can I do? Um, oh, that's a good question. Um, we have a lot of Google internal stuff. Um, External though, sorry, I'm blanking. I don't know if there's a good, um, I guess it's not really a course, but let me see if I can find this real quick. Hold on. I know there's a UX research subreddit. If you're a Reddit user, there's probably a design equivalent. But yeah, I'm trying to find there's this nice UXR newsletter. Newsletter. Trying to find the sign up link. Oh, it's just called User Weekly. Great. Okay. Um, so again, this is a bit more UXR specific. If you're a researcher, hopefully it's still interesting if you're in products in general. But yeah, userweekly.com I would recommend. Again, it's not a course, but more just like trends in the field, AI and knots. And yeah, Kim, thanks for mentioning a few others. Oh yeah, Coursera. Duh, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I have heard good things about Coursera. Thanks for mentioning that. Um, let me see. Sorry, Bernadette. I'm still. I'm imagining AI as another dimension. I don't know if this is what you mean, but there is a lot of work. I didn't talk about this today, but a lot of work we do behind the scenes in terms of like the model outputs from AI to make sure that those are inclusive and diverse. So for image generation, for example, we've done a lot of work in terms of people generation, the types of people that are shown based on different types of prompts. There's a lot of safety testing too. Unfortunately, with image, hold on. Unfortunately, with image editing, right? Like these are fun examples I showed, but there are definitely bad actors out there who want to create spam images, like propaganda, um, you know, illegal images, and so there's a lot of safety testing we do there too to make sure we're not generating content when people ask certain inappropriate things. So yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, but hopefully that helps. Um, cool. So I do have to drop, but thank you all for your time. Hope you learned something, and hopefully you were inspired to try out some of these different things at the company you work at, or in the future as well. So yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. See ya. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn too, by the way. I don't know. Hold on.